Hello and welcome to BBC Oxford News. In tonight's programme, taking the government to court to stop its plans for a high-speed rail link. How money raised by groups along the route will fund a legal challenge to stop HS2. Thousands of people living along the route of the government's planned high-speed rail link are helping to fund an expensive legal fight against the project. The campaign group HS2 Action Alliance is filing for 2 judicial reviews, one on environmental grounds, the other on inadequate plans for compensation. Taxpayers' money will also be spent on similar legal action by a coalition of councils opposed to HS2. Nikki Mitchell reports.
Adam Thomas has been paralysed from the waist down since he was 17. He and his wife have spent years adapting their home to suit his needs, only to find out the high-speed rail line is being built 100 metres from their door.
It's totally devastated our lives. I'm not sleeping. Every moment of my waking life, to be honest, I'm thinking about HS2.
The HS2 Action Alliance, which is made up of 70 different community groups, has raised over £200,000 in just 6 weeks towards the cost of its legal action.
It hasn't just come from, a few wealthy individuals. In fact, it really hasn't. It's come from a huge range of people and many, many donations.
Couldn't really afford to, don't have any savings, but couldn't afford not to. So I delayed paying off £1,000 on my credit card for a month, 2 months, and wrote a cheque out to HS2 AA Legal Fund instead.
On top of this money, which is now in the bank, 15 local councils are spending taxpayers' money bringing their own case.
It's going to cost about £68,000, and by actually clubbing together, that means we can do it much more cost effectively. But you have to weigh that against the money the government's spending. In this Parliament alone, it's spending something like £750 million of hard-pressed taxpayers' money promoting this scheme. So really, this is a David and Goliath fight.
The councils and HS2 Action Alliance have various grounds for judicial review. They don't believe people were properly consulted. Alternatives to the high-speed link weren't given enough consideration. The impact of the route on the countryside wasn't assessed properly. And the criteria being used to compensate those living along the route is wholly inadequate. The government declined our request for an interview today, but told us in a statement that HS2 is a project that will deliver jobs and prosperity across the entire country. The government believes the line of the route strikes the right balance between the environment, the need to keep Britain moving, and the reasonable concerns of people living here on or near the route, who it says will be offered compensation. Adam Thomas suspects the compensation won't be enough to pay for him to adapt a new home elsewhere, but he doesn't know for sure because the government hasn't answered any of his numerous letters and questions. Nikki Mitchell, BBC Oxford News.
A little earlier, I spoke to BBC Transport correspondent Tom Edwards and asked him what precedents there are for this type of action.
Well, there are lots of precedents when it comes to these judicial reviews and transport infrastructure, and the big one that people might remember is Heathrow and the third runway. There, one of the local MPs actually supported that judicial review, Justine Greening. She's now the Transport Secretary, so it shows how these things change. Then both sides claimed victory, even though the judge said the government hadn't taken into account the environmental impact. He didn't actually quash the third runway. He left that, or rather a later government, the coalition government, scrapped the third runway. But from a campaigner's point of view, what it did was it slowed down the process and it gave their campaign a lot more profile.
Could a judicial review actually stop HS2, do you think?
Well, what this is about the process and whether a consultation has been carried out properly and whether the environmental impacts in this case have been taken into account. So I think what it could do would be to slow the process down. The government would have to start again effectively. Interestingly, we've had a statement from the government. They say they believe the process was lawful and will be defending any legal challenge.
Tom Edwards, thank you.